Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Colony Drop, a Gundam podcast. My name is Isaac, and I'm here with my amazing co-pilot from the Federation.
My name is Brian, and today we are going to review/discuss Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin.
What we thought, what we're surprised about, and what we did not see coming. Also, what doesn't really make sense, maybe what clashes with our knowledge of the original lore and the background. Lots to talk about. Brian, Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin, it's a prequel, it's beautifully animated, and it was very short.
So I think it's important to establish what The Origin is, because like you said, it's a prequel and it's short, so it's kind of weird. It's kind of like, what am I watching right now? Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin was originally a manga. It was published from 2001 to 2011 in Japan. And that manga is basically a retelling of the original Mobile Suit Gundam from 1979, but in manga format, with some events sort of slightly altered, and then it also adds a lot of backstory that was not shown in the original series. So after that came out in Japan, they went back and published it in collector's editions with like more full color pages, which is pretty neat. Those collector's editions are going to come back because in the US, they tried to publish this twice. So the first time was in, I think, around 2001 by Viz, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked about like how to get into Gundam, I think. So Viz tried to publish it in 2001, but they didn't follow the same volume format. Like, they published thicker magazines that were somehow less than a volume. And I know they came out with one because I bought it, but then after that, I never saw it again. And my comic store stocked everything back then, because this was when hard copy manga was selling like hotcakes. Like it was just super popular. You know, you could go into, I'm sure, Isaac, you remember, you could go into Barnes & Noble or Borders at the time, and they were always handing out coupons, you know, buy 5 manga, get 1 free, that kind of thing.
Good Lord.
But apparently, apparently Viz did actually release 12 of these, I don't want to call them volumes, but they were like magazines. But then they just stopped publishing it after that. So I'd imagine that's somewhere in the early 2000s. But then another publisher named Vertical republished everything in the US during 2013 to 2015 using formats very similar to those collector editions that came out in Japan. That set it's beautiful. I highly recommend everyone picking it up. If for some reason you don't want to watch the original series, maybe you don't like old animation, Mobile Suit Gundam: The Origin, the manga, is a good way to consume that original story. So what does that mean for the anime? The anime only adapts 3 volumes out of the 12 volumes in the collector's format. And those 3 volumes are the volumes that are all of the backstory that Origin adds to the original series for the most part. The anime is essentially an OVA, original video animation. The OVAs, I think they were mostly shown, all of them I think were shown in Japanese theaters. So there's basically 6 episodes or 6 movies. Those were released in 2015 through 2018. And so then in 2019, they re-edited it into a 13-episode TV series, which is kind of strange. I guess it was just to get more life out of it. The OVAs are currently available on Hulu, and the TV series is currently available on Funimation and Crunchyroll. So which version did you watch, Isaac?
I watched it on Hulu, so it was streamed to me, and boy, did I enjoy it. Man, off the top of my head, I gotta say, I really enjoyed it. It was a fun prequel. It was almost, I'd go a step further and say it's not just a prequel, it's sort of the Xeon prequel.
I agree. I think overall, it nailed the characterization for everyone in the cast, even if at times I thought maybe Jimbo Rawl or Dozel were a little too goofy. But I really enjoyed it overall. I made a list of things I enjoyed in order and things maybe I was lukewarm on or could take it or leave it. What were some of your highlights?
Well, definitely the animation I felt was incredible. I would say it matches Unicorn at the very least. So it was excellent watching, the space combat. I really seen the fleet battles, we really haven't in other series. I love seeing so much explanation really at how Xeon got to be the Xeon that we know at the start of the original series. Also watching Char go through his personal journey, from tragedy. He's such a tragic character. This whole series is really the Char show in a way. How did Char become Char? So It goes through his growth. That was amazing to see. And this is coming from someone that's not a big Char fan because I'm loyal to the zombies, and we know what the Char is like, the anti-zombie. So it was really interesting watching everything he really had to do to survive, and Sayla as well. So overall, I feel like it was something I didn't know I wanted to see, and then having watched it, I'm really glad I've seen it, considering how much of the UC that I've consumed. How about you, Brian? What were your big sort of, maybe not highlights, but what, off the top of your head, what did you really enjoy about the series when you were done with it?
I definitely agree on Char's journey. Like you said, this is basically his story, or at least it's framed from his perspective most of the time, I would say, which is, super informative if you've seen the original series. I think one of my highlights was showing the Battle of Loom and Operation British sort of in their entirety, because those events are sort of, they're very formative for the Universal Century, right? And so it's great to
Yeah.
sort of see them on screen from start to finish.
Oh boy, they really captured the humanity of that war crime, didn't they? That atrocity.
Yeah,
Good Lord.
yeah, for sure. I mean and I know what you're referring to. You're pretty
Yeah.
much referring to the gassing of the citizens
Yeah,
in Island Ifish.
right.
Because,
They had like a self-contained sort of. I thought these were going to be new characters introduced to us, and maybe I'm naive. I thought, oh, these ones might get away or something like that. It's a love story or something. No, that was there specifically to make it all the more tragic.
totally agree. I had the same reaction. I thought, oh, maybe this is someone who I know from the future. I just don't know it yet in this episode. And then maybe 10 minutes later, I realized that they were going to die from the gassing and they weren't going to make it out. I thought it was a really effective sort of vignette within the episode to demonstrate, like you said,
Yeah.
the humanity of what had just
Right.
unfortunately occurred.
And the inhumanity of Xeon, because that Xeon officer saying, they were viewing it as a mercy, killing these people so that they wouldn't experience the terror of falling to Earth. How twisted that was from Xeon's mindset. Very well, yeah. We know who Xeon's based on, so very much like them.
Yeah, I mean that guy for that Xeon soldier was certainly drinking the Girin Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
And then actually seeing the colony fall was great. We see the colony fall in the original series, but that's obviously pretty old animation, and it's sort of mentioned. It's not really like there was a whole episode on it or anything like that. It's also shown in Unicorn, but again, this is showing the whole thing. And so in the original show, they don't really talk too much about the other pieces of the colony that broke off and sort of just rained down as smaller pieces. And I think they do a good job in this show of showing that even those debris pieces make these enormous craters in the ground and just kill all sorts of people.
You mentioned Lum. Man, that
Oh yeah.
battle was a pretty awesome battle.
Yeah,
Well,
for sure.
oh, what was interesting too was that they showed how close Xeon was to actually. Well, a lot of interesting things happened in that battle. Number one, the whole how smoke and the burning of the ships actually played into the battle itself. Also, what else was I going to say? Oh, how close they made Xeon seem that to actually losing that major battle and ultimately the war, I guess. And then even further, the fact that Giran had purposely put Dagwin out there to be killed. Spoiler alert, by the way, everybody. If you haven't, okay, we're talking about the whole series, so you should know by now. It's a spoiler. There's gonna be spoilers. How Giran put Dagwin out there in our favorite ship, the Great Dagwin, as sort of like a last line of defense, right? The flagship was out there to sort of bolster the troops and give the fleet support, but Kycelia pointed out that if the Federation does break through, they're gonna kill Dagwin, and guess who will be inheriting the leadership? It'll be Giran. So I like that little tidbit. Yeah, that the Giran was, way back when he was really gunning for the throne.
Yeah, Loom I thought was just wonderfully animated. It was just mass chaos on all sides. It was probably the best fleet battle we've seen out of Gundam, which makes sense. I mean, I guess we should say that although this is a Gundam show, there is no Gundam in it. The show is mainly capital ships, particularly on the Federation side, versus mobile suits on the Xeon side.
Yeah.
I guess we do see the Gundam a few times on some screens, but it's not in the show moving around. So the Loom fleet battle was pretty amazing. Yeah, and then like you said, I think another highlight for me was just all the backstory on the zombies, because I thought they nailed all of them. And we do see, I think, all of them within the first episode, and the characterization is like on point right away. And it's just, I don't know, it seemed very smooth and flawless to me. You get right away, that Garen is the young schemer, Dozel's the big, he's a family guy, Cassilia is a schemer with an axe to grind, Degwin is calm and collected, Sasuro was, the
he was too loud and violent for his own good.
Yeah. And then that, the whole, throughout all 6 episodes, that tension between Garen and Degwin / Cassilia, it really, like you said, supports the ending to the original series. So I think it all sort of made sense in the end. I thought that was great.
It was good seeing the zombie family being exactly what we thought they were going to be as they seize power. I mean, I'm not sure what Jimba or the Rawl family was thinking. I mean, the Rawl family is pretty much 2 people, right?
Yeah.
It's Jimba and his son. So I'm not sure what exactly happened where they thought that they could rival the zombies. Maybe the Rawl family was bigger at some point, but the zombies cut them down. But in any case, yeah, I don't blame Jimba for slowly losing a bit of his grip on reality and sanity. The situation worsened.
Yeah, I mean, he was pretty losing it there at the end, but you got to give it to him. He was right about everything. So
yeah,
you can't argue with him. That was also another highlight for me, just sort of the backstory for Ramba Ral and Hamon Crowley, his I guess wife at some point. He was kind of the hero we needed in this story. I mean, even though this is told from the most part from Char's perspective, he's not really necessarily a normal hero, I would say. Right? He does some questionable things.
A lot. Wait, we're talking about Char or Ramba?
No, Char. Yeah.
Oh boy, Char is.
Yeah.
Definitely an anti. Well, oh boy, depending on your opinion, anti-hero or anti-villain. He's anti.
Yeah. My point is just that this is told from Char's perspective, but he's not necessarily. Like, I feel like Ramba was maybe the most heroic person in the story.
Yeah, he never seemed to have done anything that was maybe controversial compared to Char, especially, right?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, Char progressively takes more questionable actions, whereas Ramba progressively gets more heroic. He saves Casval and Artesia in the beginning, and then eventually he does, participate in the mobile suit development with Dozel, but then in the end he refuses to participate in Operation British because he doesn't like attacking a defenseless side too, and you don't see him in the Battle of Loom either because he's sort of given up at that point and cursing the zombies, back at the bar. He made a moral choice at the end to kind of stay out of it, but whereas Char maybe gets progressively more morally gray. Speaking
of Char has this, if you recall, a roommate sort of classmate. Was it Leon Fernandez, right? Or Leo Fernandez?
Yeah, it was Lino, I think, or something.
Oh, like Lino, sorry.
Yeah.
Fernandez.
I know who you're talking about.
What did you feel about Char orchestrating that guy's death during their little, skirmish night operation?
Yeah, that was one of the moments where I thought it was a very in-character Char moment of being a good manipulator. And yeah, you're right. So what I took away from it is I don't think that like Char or Casval himself really wanted to kill him, but if his plan is to work, then yeah, he needed to get rid of him. He couldn't have anyone knowing.
Yeah.
It just had to be done from his perspective. But yeah, that was pretty tragic from Lino's perspective because he was actually on Casval's side. He hated the zombies too, but
I found that really interesting that the zombies had seized power, but if an academy student at like their main military academy, presumably the son of, I guess, people high enough to get their son into a military academy, if he can sort of in private speak out against the zombies, man, the zombies probably had less of a grip on Zeon than we should assume,
That's a good point. I'm sure there were varying levels of factions that we're not aware of. I mean, Zeon Zoom Daikun dropping dead on the day he's giving the speech, it's not hard to sort of infer some foul play may have happened. And in fact, I mean, all the citizens did suspect foul play, even though maybe the zombies co-opted that narrative. and directed it at the Rawl family. But I'm sure there were segments of the population that definitely could see through that ruse and probably knew that it was the Zabis all along.
Probably.
But there's no one else to really latch onto.
Yeah, I mean, the Rawls are gone. Casval and Artesia, they disappeared to Earth or the colonies. So who's left, right? The Zabis are already on the throne.
Yeah, that was their plan, and they went through with it.
Not to sidetrack us, but getting back to Fernandez, what did you think of him being the one to give Char like a like a lunar rugby mask?
Yeah, yeah.
I forgot what the name. What the sport was, like moonball or something like that.
Yeah, I believe at least in the dub. So I watched this dub. So in the dub, they called it lunar ball.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't think it's terrible. I kind of look at it as the whole thing, right? So, one, you have Casval taking over Char Aznabul's identity, and he has to block his eyes somehow because they have different eye colors, and people would notice.
Yeah.
And then later, like you said, he gets the mask from Char's friend, not necessarily his friend, but Char's friend, and it tints his vision red. There does need to be an explanation for the mask. It's not a terrible one. I don't know what a better one would be. Char/Casval himself then attributes having to wear the mask or the shades due to cosmic ray damage on his eyes. So I don't hate it. It's an interesting attempt to explain it. The other way to explain it would be just to not explain it, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I thought it was interesting that they chose to make an explanation. I'm just not 100% thinking that was the right explanation they should have chosen. They didn't stick the landing. It, as far as I'm concerned, it's the equivalent of like a military officer wearing like, I don't know, a golf glove or or like, the baseball helmet with like, the one side of the cheek is protected, just because, I got this and it was a gift or something, I wear this from now on. It's like, no, that really wouldn't work in, I guess, a military, but I don't know. They could have done it better. Like, it's a mask he wore because, he claims he was, he got facial burns during that rebellion strike against the Federation garrison or something like that. But it is what it is.
Yeah. I mean, maybe here's the change I think I would make. If you just ignore the lunar ball mask and you just go with the cosmic ray damage, that's probably a better explanation. But then maybe just show that there are other people wearing this mask, or at one point there were other people wearing this mask, and maybe they've since developed some procedure to get rid of it and you don't need to wear the mask anymore. But for some reason, Char says that, it doesn't work for me, and he has to continue wearing the mask, and that's why he's the only one left. But that way, if at least it's like a mask for a medical reason, people would probably ask less questions than if it was a lunar ball mask. I mean, you don't go to the gym, put on your lunar ball mask, and then leave, and you don't wear it the rest of the day, right? So,
yeah, that was a much better explanation. I like your idea so much more because that really lays down some more world building as far as space being sort of a dangerous place, and the colonists are just sort of at the mercy of the elements out there. It's not entirely healthy for them maybe, but they're stuck there. Everyone on Earth is just living it up without having to worry about facial and eye radiation.
Yeah,
I feel like he did eye drops too, right, in the show, if I'm remembering correctly.
He did, yes.
I feel like they're doing too much with the eyes and stuff. He wears a lunar ball mask. He wears sunglasses. Does eye drops. It almost would have been easier if he did eye drops, but they changed his eye color or something like that to help him hide. But overall, not a big part of the story. It just sort of covered him in hiding more. So interesting.
On a related note, I'm still not sure how I feel about Char really being someone else's name.
You thought it would be something he thought up, like this was a completely made alter ego, like he thought of this as he went into Xeon?
Yeah, I mean, kind of. I can't say that explanation, that plot line is poorly written, because it's not. I think it's done pretty well. Particularly, him switching places with Char is very in character when he realizes that Cassilia is trying to kill him, and he notices people following him. So that is a very like Char move to make. It's not poorly written. I don't know. I mean, we all know him as Char Aznable, and and it's not even really his name. It's someone else's
Yeah.
name. It's different being an alias that he adopted versus some other dude. You know, so this like really very nice
Yeah.
boy from this nice colony.
Who happens to look just like him.
Yeah, a little coincidental, but
What
maybe
what do
that's
you
just
think?
me being weird. But yeah,
What did you think about Char? Like you just said, switching. Okay, sorry, Casval switching places with Char and getting Char killed. Do you think Casval knew that shuttle was going to blow up, or that whoever got on that seat looking like him would be dead pretty soon? Or do you think, oh, maybe they're just going to monitor him or shadow him as he goes back to wherever he's going?
I definitely think that he knew that if he got on that shuttle, he was gonna die. I don't think he probably knew that the whole shuttle was going down.
Yeah.
Because I mean, wow,
Oh
Cassilia.
boy. Yeah. It's like
Talking
you
about
can't
overkill.
like. Wouldn't it have been like easier to just have like one of the flight attendants like poison like his soda or something?
Well, I mean, I think they
Or you
wanted
have
to
to
do
take
it.
out the whole shuttle.
I think the explanation was that they wanted plausible deniability, right? That there wasn't an assassination attempt on Edouard Mass, who someone doing some research could figure out was really Casval. So, in order to avoid that, he was just one of many. That's how I interpreted it from the show. But he definitely knew he was getting the real Char killed. I don't know that he knew he was getting everyone else killed as well.
Speaking of Edouard, just going back to the sort of the beginning of the series, it was cool seeing Sayla being her little doctor, sort of Red Cross attendant, way back in the day before the whole war even started. I like that.
Yeah, I thought Sayla was great in this show. I mean,
Yeah.
to be honest, remember we've talked a lot about the live action movie and what that could hold if maybe they casted Sayla as like a third lead. This is the version of Sayla that I think you would need for that third lead. This girl that's had this just one tragic thing happen to her after another. Her mom dies, Casval leaves her, then her cat dies.
Yeah.
and then finally
Don Tiablo.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then
the
her
adopted father.
Yep, and then her adopted father dies. But then at the same time, she's, like you said, she becomes this like doctor / medic. I'm not exactly sure what role she plays, but she's clearly helping out. So, but then at the same time, she's able to be this badass person with this rifle that can, when her house and all of her little town was threatened, she can start killing all the rioters if she really needed to. So I feel like that's the version of Sayla that we need in the live action movie if she's going to be in it.
Yeah, I agree. At the risk of sidetracking us again, I have a confusing moment. If you remember when they're being attacked in Spain, right, in their castle, Char has to fight like a guy dressed up as a knight, like a medieval knight. Was a member of the hit squad hiding in the castle for a long time dressed up as the knight? Or did they sneak in, see like, oh, this is a castle, they have like knight armor, let me put on the armor, pick up a sword, and I'll kill everybody like this?
You know what? I totally agree with you. I don't understand what that was about or why that was necessary. It seems very over the top. It was fun to watch, I guess. Here's the thing. I have not finished reading the rest of the manga, so I was wondering if maybe that was better explained in the manga and they just kind of didn't explain it in the OVA.
Okay.
So until I read the manga from cover to cover, I'm not going to criticize it yet. But yeah, I think if you just watch it cold, that was a little out there. Like it doesn't. I mean, the guy could have just taken the sword. He doesn't need to necessarily take the entire suit of armor, which seemed like it was very hard to move around in.
Yeah,
I don't know.
It was ultimately his downfall. I mean, literally, no pun intended. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if when you read the manga, like it was just a hit squad. They all have guns.
Yeah,
because like I would be surprised if this hit squad rolls up of like 15 guys or whatever, and like they all have machine guns, and one guy's like, "Oh look, there's a suit of armor, guys. I've always wanted to do this," and then he like just puts down his gun and like takes 20 minutes to like put on the armor. Maybe they have to help him. And then he's like, all right, I'm gonna like sneak around in the shadows. If you see moving armor, it's me, don't shoot me.
I do like that you put a lot of thought into it, and
Yeah,
that maybe
well,
he had been there a very long time, and that he was like hiding out as the suit of armor.
I mean,
I like that you
yeah.
tried to explain it. So it's better than I did.
My brain was just trying to piece it together. Like, okay, there's a guy in armor trying to kill them. I mean, you'd almost think if there was anybody in armor fighting that day or that night, it would be someone, protecting the castle. Like, I don't know, the loyal butler or something, right? I don't know. I thought that could have been done better, but it was clearly, I think, they were doing it to just foreshadow Char fighting armored, sword wielding enemies in the future.
Oh,
So,
true. Yeah.
yeah.
He also the fencing duel with Amuro in Mobile Suit Gundam, so maybe part of it too. But yeah, I agree. Out of left field, I remember when it first started, when they first started showing the armored guy come into the castle or whatever. Like I thought it was gonna be revealed to be a dream sequence because
Oh.
if he why is the armored guy there? I thought it was like the manifestation of Sayla's nightmare or something like that.
Oh, it'd be like Hamlet. Like he'd lift up his like face armor, and it was like Xeon. It was Xeon the Daikon.
Yeah, or something, but no, it ended up just being like literally a dude in a suit of armor, trying to kill him, and I was like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing that. But yeah, I totally agree. I don't know.
Or even a robot. I would have been like, oh, in passing, did I hear them mention like, oh, we got some new armor displays delivered today, but like one of them was like a robot sent by Kycilia.
Interesting.
But yeah, even that didn't happen.
Nope.
What a sidetrack. I apologize to our listeners. Comment below if you think the night came out of nowhere.
Yeah, or if you know why the night makes sense, because yeah, we were a little confused. But on that note of other things that we didn't really understand or maybe weren't our favorite, the whole inclusion of like Amuro, Kai, and Hayato, I don't really know if that was needed. I'm not sure that it really added much other than it
didn't.
It just, I mean, you already knew that Kai was a dick, and he was more of a dick in this version than I think even the last version. And you already knew that Fraubo was a nice person, and she was even nicer in this version. And you already knew that Hayato didn't say much, and he said even less in this version. So yeah. I'm not really sure what we learned. I think that part was probably could have just been skipped. I don't know. What did you think?
I felt like maybe they wanted to do more with his little subplot where, he finds his dad's research and he's reading and finds the secret room and all of that. But I don't know. That almost takes away from how well he does as either a new type or just himself piloting the Gundam initially. This almost seems like he had just too much knowledge ahead of time. So I didn't care for it that much. Yeah, I just agree that it didn't add much to the story. Him going to the base and then the guards are like, oh, we didn't know you're Temrei's son. And here, stand here while we slap around your friends.
Yeah, by the way, they drove that bulldozer or whatever it was up to the base. And then the base just like shot
comes
10 like 10 machine guns at it.
Yeah.
I don't know what that bulldozer was made out of, but they should make Zaku's out of that thing because it was more resilient than a Zaku.
In Zaku's defense, those were small arms fire. All right.
Yeah,
but
that's fair.
That whole scene just led up to showing the Federation was, not exactly the knights in shining armor.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And then I guess on the subject of Amuro's father, there are two things that stuck out to me about him. One, I didn't really like that he was Minovsky's like student. I didn't think everything needed to be connected. That just seemed like we were trying to connect everything like nice and neatly.
Yeah, I mean, before this series, did you assume Minovsky was alive, relatively close to Amuro and everybody else?
No, I had always imagined him as just a scientist maybe from 100 years or less ago, but I would have assumed that he had been dead for some time. Given how important his technology is, I kind of had assumed that his technology helped kick off the Universal Century.
I agree too. I assumed he was sort of their Einstein or something. Like, he was just this monumental mind that was alive a long time ago. He had brilliant ideas that led to a lot of technology. We had nuclear power in our century, and in their century they have, Minovsky reactors and all that. I assumed it was the same thing. It felt a bit shoehorned in that we saw him, and then he gets kind of caught up in the whole intrigue and stuff, and he was around to watch his work in actual use, much to his detriment. But yeah, he was technically there for the first mobile suit battle in history.
That was his last battle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, he would have lived if the Black Tri-Stars weren't so damn aggressive.
He had probably the most hilarious yet sad death.
Yeah.
Given who he is and how he died, he is responsible for the creation of mobile suits, essentially, or maybe not the creation of mobile suits, but the enabling mobile suits to be used in the way that they are used. And how does he die? But one falls on him.
This is what you designed. This is what you wanted. Here you go.
Oh, cruel twist of fate.
Yeah. Speaking of mobile suits, I felt like the gun tank should not have been as ubiquitous as it seemed. Boy, they had plenty to spare at like a garrison at Side 3, the farthest colonies from Earth. I was under the assumption that the gun tank was more of a failed mobile suit project. Maybe I'm wrong in my understanding or memory, but I assumed it was sort of a dead end since it was little more than a glorified tank. So they didn't exactly make a ton of them until that was retconned for like, the 8th MS team and all the side stories and that. They sort of just had one, it wasn't great, and they moved on from there to like Guncannon and Gundam.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're half right. So that's actually one of the biggest changes that the series makes from the original. The original series, you basically have Gun Tank, Gun Cannon, Gundam, all brand new, all delivered kind of on the same day. They all go into service on the same day. This series takes a different approach and actually shows that gun tanks have been around, maybe in a more prototype form, for many, many years before that. So you're not wrong. That's just one thing that they decided to change, which that's maybe not unrealistic, right? I mean, if you're going to make mobile suits, maybe you start with something that doesn't have legs. I could see that. But yeah, that does clash a bit with the original series.
Yeah, and I felt, well, let me put this to you before expressing my own thoughts, I guess. How did you feel watching those gun cannons in combat against the Zaku ones? They didn't even have hands. They had like four claw graspers or something like that.
Yeah, they had manipulator, like forceps.
Like the machine that gets you like a stuffed animal, the crane, the claw that you see at the arcade or something like that at the carnival. That was their hand.
The claw.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were embarrassing.
My God. I couldn't believe how poorly they performed, especially when we know the later gun cannon on the white base. It might not be a Gundam, but boy, does it do pretty good.
Yeah. I mean, we'll just have to chalk that up to being the new model. But yeah, those gun cannons were pretty embarrassing. And I think what makes it especially embarrassing is if you remember in that fight, the commander of that squadron or whatever, he goes, "Send the whole squad." I forget what their name is. They
outnumbered Xeon.
Yeah, I think there was like 20 something of them, right, in the squad. And they go, "Sir, send all of them." He goes, "Yes, we must crush them." So this dude dispatches like 20 of these things. And I guess how many people were there? There was only 5 if you count Char.
Right.
They outnumbered the enemy basically 4 to 1, and they still lost in embarrassing fashion. They didn't even take out one Zaku one or do any meaningful damage to anyone.
They even lost their capital ship.
Char made short work of that little drop ship or whatever.
Yeah. The carrier that the Federation threw together.
Yeah. Oh boy, those were embarrassing. Totally agree. One last thing. This isn't a big issue. This is just my own personal preference. So I did watch this dubbed, and I did miss the original dubbed cast. They recasted everybody. There was nothing wrong with these voices. They just weren't the same. Shout out to the original early 2000s dub cast of Mobile Suit Gundam. I did miss our Captain Bright and our Amuro. The new Char was good. He sounded very similar to the old Char, but the other ones, there's nothing wrong with their voice. It just wasn't the same.
I agree, but I don't know. I feel like for the purposes of the story, I was willing to move away from the voices I thought I would hear. It's a prequel, so I gave them some room to move around. Yeah. And speaking of room, I'll also give room to the poor gun cannon pilots. It was their first day on the job. They really weren't expecting to go into such tenacious combat, I assume. So, although another funny moment besides watching that curb stomp was watching General Revil run during his escape, because he runs like I don't know what this. He runs like a penguin in 0G.
You're right. He did have an interesting run for sure. Definitely maybe the run of someone who doesn't run very often, maybe.
Yeah, I thought the military had like requirements on like, weight and waist size, even if you're older in the military. For
His
Rebel, they threw that out the window.
he was grandfathered in.
I can eat whatever I want. I'll rank everybody on the base.
To be fair, maybe his head was wrapped. Maybe he had like a concussion or something.
That's true. He's not too secure-footed, so.
General Revil, sort of on the same topic of voices, I thought General Revil's VA was great. Like
Yeah.
whoever that guy was, I loved that guy's performance. He did a fantastic job. He gave an air of authority and maturity. I thought it was great.
I liked it too. It was really commanding, and just watching him and hearing him in combat was great too. You really felt like he was a pretty awesome fleet admiral. Even the intrigue and stuff with Dagwin, those were cool scenes. I had no idea I was going to see that. What exactly was Dagwin thinking would happen? That like he'd let Revil go and Revil would surrender like unilaterally for the Federation?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think the whole intrigue between Giran, Dagwin, Cassilia, and Revil is probably my favorite part of this series from a plot perspective. Like Operation British and Loom were great visually, but I mean, you kind of know what's going to happen there. It's very straightforward, right? They're going to drop a colony. They're going to have a big fleet battle. There's nothing complicated there. But the whole interplay between those characters was amazing. And frankly, I was shocked that Revil I don't want to say betray, but he turned his back on what he had promised Dagwin. That kind of shocked me, to be honest. Based on their conversation, I thought they had like a kinship of like, okay, we both know this is terrible, and we need to get out of it, and now is the time to end it and make everything okay. And then you're right, Revil kind of just was like, F it, Zeon's exhausted and they're going down. I was like, oh.
I guess that shows that Dagon was just such a poor judge of character that he thought Revil would push for the surrender. But everyone from Giran to Caesilia to even Makube on Earth, they like completely expected Revil to say exactly what he said just to extend the war. So I wonder how they knew that, or maybe they just assumed that like, even if Daewin does go ahead with his plot to release him, this will really only work in favor of propagating the war. But man, what a mess up by Dagwin. And this just shows that the Zombies and Zeon on a whole, I guess, they weren't working together from day zero. So, the war might have been lost on day zero.
I guess maybe how I look at it is it seemed like Dagwin and Revil had the most analytical minds, but Revil was much better at execution, and maybe Dagwin was too trusting.
Oh boy, Dagwin. He's pretty good at, I guess, outmaneuvering people that don't see him coming, but since his whole family knows how he operates, I guess they can kind of tiptoe around him or maneuver where they need to, like Giran and Caesilia.
Yeah, because I mean, he did see Giran's treachery looming, but in the end, it doesn't work out for him. So
it was dumb enough to go watch Loam from like the front lines. Then again, maybe like he assumed he had to because as the head of Zeon, he needs to be there. But his death really would have only benefited Giran.
When you have an invincible flagship called the Great Dagwin.
It was the biggest in the Earth sphere at that time, so you got me there. Speaking of zombies.
And we're going to cut it there for this episode. Tune in next week as we conclude our review of Mobile Suit Gundam The Origin with more thoughts on the zombies, the mobile suits, and why Tem Ray is a terrible father. Please like, comment, and subscribe. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts, and you can leave us a comment on YouTube or on Twitter @ColonyDropcast. Until next time, keep those Minovsky reactors warm.